Most people spend their entire lives begging an external God for help, never understanding why their prayers feel empty. Joel Goldsmith discovered something that changed everything. You are not separate from God. You are the very presence of divine consciousness itself. When you pray to God, you create distance. When you pray as God, you become the answer. This is not blasphemy. This is the deepest truth of mystical Christianity. God is not a person sitting on a throne somewhere in the sky. God is infinite consciousness, and you are the expression of that consciousness right here, right now. Every cell of your body is filled with this divine presence, waiting for you to recognize it. The moment you stop asking and start being, everything shifts. You are not pleading with a distant deity. You are awakening to the power that already lives within you. This is the secret that transformed thousands of lives through Joel's teachings. This is what happens when you finally understand. You are not praying to God. You are praying as God. Think about how you have prayed until now. You asked for healing, for money, for love, for solutions. You begged, you bargained, you pleaded. And sometimes nothing happened. You felt abandoned, ignored, or unworthy. But the problem was never God's unwillingness to help. The problem was the entire premise of your prayer. When you pray to God, you are operating from a sense of separation. You are saying that God is over there and you are over here, lacking something. You are reinforcing the very illusion that causes your suffering. You are denying the fundamental truth of your spiritual identity. Joel Goldsmith taught that true prayer is not petition. True prayer is recognition. It is the conscious awareness that God is already present as your very being. You do not need to convince God to help you. You need to awaken to the fact that God's infinite power is already functioning as you. This understanding changes everything. Your prayers stop being desperate requests. They become powerful declarations of truth. You are not asking for healing. You are recognizing that wholeness is already present. You are not begging for abundance. You are acknowledging that infinite supply is your spiritual nature. Let me show you the practical difference. The old way of praying sounds like this. Dear God, please heal my body. Please send me money. Please fix my relationship. This prayer assumes you are broken, empty, and separate from divine help. It reinforces lack and limitation in your consciousness. Now listen to prayer as God. I recognize the divine presence that I am. Infinite wholeness is expressing as this body right now. Limitless abundance is the nature of my consciousness. Perfect love is already present in this situation. Do you feel the difference? One is begging. The other is recognizing truth. When you pray as God, you are not denying your human experience. You are elevating your awareness to the spiritual reality that exists beyond appearances. You are not pretending problems do not exist. You are acknowledging the greater truth that dissolves those problems. This is not positive thinking or affirmation. This is spiritual realization. You are not trying to create something new. You are uncovering what has always been present. The divine presence does not come and go based on your prayers. It is the eternal reality of your being, waiting for your recognition. Joel Goldsmith called this the practice of recognizing God as individual being, not God and you. Just God appearing as you. There is only one power, one presence, one consciousness, and it is expressing itself as your individual existence right now. This is not ego inflation. This is spiritual awakening. When you truly understand this, prayer becomes communion rather than petition. You are not talking to someone. You are aligning with the infinite consciousness that you are. You are not asking for something outside yourself. You are awakening to the fullness that is already present within your own being. The transformation begins the moment you stop seeing yourself as a separate person trying to reach God. You are not separate. You never were. The sense of separation is the only problem. The recognition of oneness is the only solution. This is what happens when you stop praying to God and start praying as God. This is the foundation of everything Joel taught. This is the secret that leads to effortless healing, natural abundance, and the peace that surpasses understanding. And in the next minutes, you will discover exactly how to apply this revolutionary understanding to every area of your life. Sarah had been praying for her chronic pain to disappear for 7 years. Every night she begged God to heal her body. She tried every prayer formula, every religious technique, every spiritual method she could find. Nothing worked. The pain remained, and her faith began to crumble under the weight of unanswered prayers. Then she discovered Joel Goldsmith's teachings on praying as God. At first it seemed impossible, even arrogant. How could she, a suffering human being, pray as if she were God? But something in the teaching resonated deeply. She decided to try for 1 month, completely changing her approach to prayer. Instead of begging for healing, she began each morning with recognition. The divine presence that I am is perfect wholeness. Infinite life is expressing as this body right now. There is no power in pain because there is only one power, and it is God. She did not try to make the pain go away. She simply recognized the greater truth. The first 2 weeks brought no physical change, but something shifted in her consciousness. She felt less victimized by the pain, less identified with it. By week 3, she noticed the pain intensity decreasing. By week 6, she experienced her first completely pain-free day in 7 years. Today, she lives free from chronic pain, not because God finally answered her prayers, but because she awakened to the truth that was present all along. Marcus was drowning in debt, $40,000 of credit card bills, a failing business, and no clear path forward. For months he prayed desperately, God, please send me money, please save my business, please help me survive. His prayers felt like throwing words into an empty void. Nothing changed except his growing desperation. When he learned about praying as God, he felt resistant. How could he claim divine abundance when his bank account was empty? But Joel's teachings made sense. If God is infinite supply and God is expressing as individual being, then infinite supply must be his spiritual nature, regardless of current appearances. He began practicing recognition. I am the presence of infinite abundance. Limitless supply is the nature of my consciousness. Every need is already met in the divine reality that I am. He did this daily, not to create abundance, but to align his awareness with spiritual truth. He stopped the desperate energy of begging and moved into the power of recognition. Within 3 months, unexpected opportunities appeared. A former colleague offered a consulting contract. A business idea he had abandoned suddenly found investors. His debt did not disappear overnight, but the flow of income increased steadily. Within 18 months, he was completely debt-free and his business had transformed. The shift began not with God giving him something, but with him recognizing what was already spiritually present. Jennifer's marriage was collapsing. Years of resentment, communication breakdowns, and emotional distance had created a wall between her and her husband. She prayed constantly, God, please fix my husband. Please change his heart. Please save my marriage. Her prayers felt powerless because they were focused on changing someone else. Joel's teaching showed her a different way. She could not change her husband through prayer, but she could recognize the divine presence in him and in the relationship itself. She stopped praying for her marriage and started recognizing the truth about her marriage. Perfect love was already present, obscured only by false perceptions and ego reactions. Her new practice became, I recognize divine love as the only presence in this relationship. The consciousness that I am and the consciousness that my husband is are one in God. There is no separation, no real conflict, only temporary blindness to the truth. She focused on seeing her husband through spiritual eyes rather than hurt feelings. The transformation took time. Weeks passed before she noticed subtle shifts. Her husband seemed softer, more open. Conversations became easier. Old patterns began dissolving. It took nearly a year, but their marriage not only survived, it became deeper and more authentic than ever before. The healing came not from God intervening, but from Jennifer awakening to the love that was always present. These stories are not miracles in the traditional sense. They are demonstrations of what happens when consciousness shifts from separation to recognition. Sarah, Marcus, and Jennifer did not receive something from an external God. They awakened to the divine reality that was already functioning as their true identity. This is the power of praying as God. The results are not always instant. Sometimes recognition deepens gradually over weeks or months. Sometimes old patterns resist before they dissolve, but every person who practices this way discovers the same truth. You are not separate from the power you have been seeking. You are the very presence of that power, here and now. This is not about ego or personal power. This is about spiritual identity. When you recognize yourself as the expression of divine consciousness, you stop living from fear, lack, and limitation. You start living from wholeness, abundance, and peace. You stop begging an external source. You start being the presence you were created to express. If these transformation stories inspire you to discover your true spiritual identity, like this video to help others find these life-changing teachings, subscribe for more Joel Goldsmith wisdom that awakens your divine nature, and comment which story resonated most deeply with your own spiritual journey right now. Beyond the foundational practice of recognizing God as your being, Joel Goldsmith taught complementary techniques that deepen this realization. The first is what he called the practice of silence. Not the silence of suppressing thoughts, but the silence of resting in the awareness of divine presence without words, without effort, without striving. Most people fill their prayer time with endless words, petitions, and mental activity. They believe more words equal more power. But Joel discovered the opposite. True spiritual power emerges in the silence where human effort ceases and divine consciousness reveals itself. This is not empty silence. This is pregnant silence, filled with the presence of God. Practice this daily. After your recognition statements, sit in complete silence for 5 to 10 minutes. Do not try to make anything happen. Do not visualize outcomes. Do not repeat affirmations. Simply rest in the awareness that divine presence is here, now, as you. Let that presence do its perfect work without interference from your human mind. In that silence, something happens that words cannot accomplish. Your consciousness shifts from human effort to divine grace. You stop trying to make things happen and allow the infinite intelligence that created the universe to work through you. This is where real transformation occurs, in the silent recognition of what is already spiritually true. The second complementary technique is releasing material sense. Material sense is the belief that your good comes from external sources, from people, from circumstances, from physical conditions. As long as you believe your healing depends on doctors, your abundance depends on jobs, or your happiness depends on other people, you are praying to God rather than as God. Joel taught that spiritual consciousness recognizes only one source, the divine presence itself. Your good does not come from outside. It comes from the infinite consciousness expressing as your individual being. Doctors may be instruments, jobs may be channels, people may be vehicles, but they are never the source. God is the only source. Practice releasing material sense by catching yourself every time you think your solution must come from a specific person or circumstance. Recognize instead, my source is infinite consciousness. My good comes from God expressing as my being. I am not limited to human channels. This shifts your dependence from the external to the internal, from the temporary to the eternal. This does not mean you reject human help or practical action. It means you recognize that behind every human channel is the one divine source. You receive help gratefully, but you do not make any person or circumstance your God. Your security rests in spiritual reality, not material appearances. The third technique is what Joel called impersonalization. This means recognizing that problems have no personal identity or power. Illness is not your illness. Lack is not your poverty. Conflict is not your enemy. These are simply appearances, temporary beliefs, false suggestions that have no reality in God. When you personalize problems, you give them power over you. You identify with them, you own them, you make them part of your story. But when you impersonalize, you see them as the nothingness they truly are. Beliefs floating in consciousness with no power except what you give them through acceptance and fear. Practice this. When facing any challenge, say silently, "This has no power because it has no presence in God. It is not mine, not personal, not real. It is simply a suggestion I am now refusing to accept. Only divine perfection is present. Only divine power is operating. Only divine harmony is real." You are not denying your experience. You are denying the power behind the experience. Impersonalization removes the sting from problems. They become temporary clouds passing through your awareness rather than solid realities defining your existence. When you stop personalizing challenges, they lose their grip on your consciousness. And when they lose their grip on consciousness, they begin losing their grip on your experience. These three techniques work together with the foundation of praying as God. Recognition establishes your true identity. Silence allows divine wisdom to emerge. Releasing material sense shifts your dependence to spiritual source. Impersonalization removes power from appearances. Together they create a complete practice of spiritual consciousness. You do not need to perfect all these techniques immediately. Start with recognition, the foundation, then add silence, then practice releasing material sense, then work with impersonalization. Let your practice develop naturally over weeks and months. Spiritual consciousness is not built in a day. It is cultivated through consistent, patient practice. Joel Goldsmith spent years developing these understandings through direct spiritual experience. He tested them in thousands of healing situations. He refined them through decades of teaching. You are receiving the distilled wisdom of a lifetime of spiritual discovery. Trust the process, practice faithfully, and watch as your consciousness transforms. Remember, you are not trying to get something through these practices. You are recognizing what already is. You are not creating spiritual reality. You are uncovering it. You are not becoming divine. You are awakening to the divinity that has always been your true nature. This is the power of praying as God rather than to God. But let's be honest about the challenges you will face. The first and biggest obstacle is doubt. Your rational mind will resist this entire approach. It will say, "This is arrogant. This is delusional. This is dangerous. You are not God." And in one sense, your mind is correct. Your human ego is not God. But your essential consciousness is the expression of divine presence. The doubt will come in waves, especially when circumstances do not change immediately. You will recognize truth in the morning and doubt it by afternoon. You will practice for a week and feel powerful, then face a setback and question everything. This is normal. This is part of the process. Joel himself experienced these doubts during his years of spiritual discovery. The way through doubt is not to fight it, but to recognize it for what it is, another appearance in consciousness with no real power. When doubt arises, do not engage it in argument. Simply return to recognition. God is present as my being right now. This doubt has no power to change spiritual truth. I rest in what is real. Acknowledge the doubt, then move past it. Over time, as you see results from your practice, doubt loses its grip. You build a track record of spiritual demonstration. You accumulate evidence that consciousness truly does govern experience. The doubt never completely disappears, but it becomes background noise rather than a paralyzing force. You learn to practice despite doubt, not after doubt vanishes. The second major challenge is impatience. You want immediate results. You practice recognition for a few days and expect your entire life to transform. When change does not happen on your timeline, you become frustrated and abandon the practice. But spiritual consciousness develops like physical strength, gradually, through consistent practice over time. Joel was clear about this. Spiritual realization is not magic. It is the natural result of aligning consciousness with truth. Sometimes demonstrations happen quickly. Sometimes they unfold over months. Sometimes the change happens first in your inner peace, then later in outer circumstances. You cannot control the timeline. You can only control your faithfulness to the practice. The antidote to impatience is surrendering outcomes while remaining committed to practice. You practice recognition not to get results, but because it is the truth. You sit in silence not to make things happen, but because you are communing with your own divine nature. When you release attachment to specific timing, the pressure dissolves and practice becomes joyful rather than burdensome. Many people experience what Joel called the demonstration lag. Consciousness shifts first, then circumstances follow. You may feel different inside before anything changes outside. Trust this. Inner transformation always precedes outer change. If you are experiencing peace, clarity, or new understanding, the physical demonstration is already in motion. Do not let impatience abort the process. The third challenge is inconsistency. You practice intensely for a week, then stop for 2 weeks. You recognize truth when things are good, but abandon it when crises hit. You read Joel's books with passion, then let them collect dust. Inconsistency prevents the deep transformation that comes from sustained spiritual practice. Spiritual consciousness is built through daily recognition, just as physical health requires daily care. You would not exercise once a week and expect fitness. You would not eat healthy one day and expect wellness. Similarly, you cannot practice spiritual recognition sporadically and expect transformed consciousness. Daily practice, even brief, is more powerful than occasional intense sessions. Create a simple, sustainable daily practice. 5 minutes of recognition in the morning, 5 minutes of silence before sleep. On difficult days, do at least this minimum. On open days, extend the practice. The key is consistency, not perfection. 100 days of 5-minute practice will transform your consciousness more than 10 days of hour-long practice, followed by weeks of nothing. Joel emphasized that spiritual living is not about dramatic experiences or mystical states. It is about the steady, quiet cultivation of divine awareness in the midst of daily life. The power is in the consistency. The transformation comes through repetition. The demonstration emerges from faithfulness. Make the practice non-negotiable, as essential as breathing. The fourth challenge is isolation. You may be the only person in your life practicing these principles. Family members think you are strange. Friends do not understand. You feel alone on this path. This sense of isolation can weaken your commitment when you most need support and encouragement. Joel faced this too. His teachings were radical for his time. Many people rejected his message. He learned to find strength in his inner communion with God rather than depending on external validation. He built communities of like-minded seekers who supported each other's practice. He created resources that helped people feel connected to something larger than themselves. You can do the same. Seek out Joel Goldsmith study groups, online communities, or local gatherings where these principles are honored. Read his books regularly to strengthen your understanding. Listen to his recordings to feel connected to his consciousness. Build relationships with others walking this path. You do not need many people, just a few who truly understand. Most importantly, recognize that your real companion on this journey is the divine presence itself. You are never truly alone because God is functioning as your very consciousness right now. When you feel isolated, return to recognition. The infinite presence that I am is my constant companion. I am surrounded by divine love, supported by infinite wisdom, held by eternal consciousness. This is always true, whether you feel it or not. If these challenge-breaking insights give you courage to continue your practice despite obstacles, like this video to strengthen others on the same path, subscribe for advanced spiritual wisdom that sustains your journey, and comment which challenge you are ready to overcome through consistent recognition right now. Now let's explore advanced applications of praying as God in daily life situations. First, consider how this transforms your approach to health challenges. When physical symptoms appear, the old way is panic and immediate focus on the problem. The new way is recognition. The divine body that I am knows only wholeness. Infinite intelligence is governing every cell right now. You do not deny symptoms or refuse medical care. You simply refuse to give symptoms ultimate power or reality. You see them as temporary appearances in consciousness rather than final verdicts on your health. You visit doctors while maintaining your spiritual recognition. You take medicine while knowing that God is the true healing presence working through all channels. This creates an entirely different experience of illness. Instead of fear dominating your consciousness, peace becomes possible even amid symptoms. Instead of feeling victimized by your body, you maintain your spiritual authority. Instead of begging God to fix you, you recognize the wholeness that is already present. Healing may come quickly or gradually, but your consciousness remains stable either way. Joel worked with thousands of people facing serious health challenges. He never told them to reject medical help. He taught them to maintain spiritual consciousness while using every practical resource available. The power is not in rejecting the human, but in recognizing the divine that transcends the human. This is mature spiritual practice. In business and career, praying as God means recognizing that your supply comes from infinite consciousness, not from any job, client, or economic condition. When facing financial pressure, Instead of desperate job searching from fear, you practice recognition. Infinite abundance is expressing as my experience right now. Every need is already met in divine reality. This does not mean you sit passively waiting for money to fall from the sky. You take intelligent action, you pursue opportunities, you work diligently. But your inner state is not desperate hustling from lack. It is confident action from spiritual abundance. You work from fullness, not from emptiness. You create from overflow, not from fear. The difference is palpable. People sense when you are operating from desperation versus confidence. Opportunities respond to consciousness. When your inner state is aligned with spiritual abundance, you attract circumstances that reflect that abundance. When your inner state is dominated by lack, you repel the very things you are seeking. Consciousness creates conditions. Joel demonstrated this principle repeatedly. During times of apparent lack, he maintained recognition of infinite supply. Invariably, abundance manifested through unexpected channels. Not because he begged hard enough, but because his consciousness was aligned with spiritual truth. The same principle works for you. Your supply is already present in consciousness, waiting for your recognition to bring it into visible form. In relationships, praying as God transforms how you relate to difficult people. Instead of trying to change them through manipulation, control, or even positive thinking about them, you recognize the divine presence in them. The consciousness that I am and the consciousness that they are is one in God. Only love is real. Only divine harmony is present. This does not mean you tolerate abuse or remain in harmful situations. Spiritual recognition sometimes leads to setting healthy boundaries or ending toxic relationships. But you do so from clarity rather than hatred, from wisdom rather than victimhood. You recognize that the person's behavior is not who they truly are. Their anger, selfishness, or cruelty is a temporary expression of spiritual blindness, not their ultimate reality. When you hold this recognition, something remarkable happens. Either the person's behavior begins to shift, or your ability to handle the situation with peace increases, or circumstances naturally create healthy distance. You are not trying to control outcomes. You are simply maintaining your spiritual awareness regardless of appearances. Joel taught that you cannot heal another person's consciousness through mental manipulation. But you can maintain your own spiritual awareness and refuse to accept the reality of conflict, separation, or hatred. Your clear consciousness becomes a healing presence that impacts the entire situation, even if the specific outcome differs from your original expectation. The most advanced application is recognizing God as your being in moments of crisis. When everything seems to be falling apart, when multiple problems hit simultaneously, when you feel completely overwhelmed, this is when praying as God demonstrates its ultimate power. In the midst of chaos, you return to the one truth. I am the presence of divine peace right now. Not, I wish I had peace, or, God, please give me peace. But peace is what I am because God is what I am. This is not denial of circumstances. This is anchoring in reality that transcends circumstances. The problems may be real on the human level, but they have no power over the divine presence that is your true identity. Joel experienced profound crises in his own life. Health challenges, relationship losses, professional setbacks. In every crisis, he returned to the same recognition. God is present, God is operating, God is the only power. And every crisis eventually revealed itself as an opportunity for deeper spiritual realization. Not because the crisis was good, but because consciousness can find God in any situation. You develop this capacity through practice. You do not wait for crisis to try this approach for the first time. You build your spiritual strength in daily small challenges so that when big challenges come, the practice is already natural. You train your consciousness in peaceful moments so that in chaotic moments, recognition becomes your automatic response rather than panic. As you continue this practice over months and years, something profound happens. Praying as God stops being a technique and becomes your natural state of being. You no longer have to remind yourself that God is present. You simply live from that awareness. You no longer practice recognition as something separate from life. Recognition becomes how you live. This is what Joel called spiritual consciousness. It is not about having mystical experiences or seeing visions or hearing voices. It is about the quiet, steady awareness of divine presence functioning as your individual being. It is about living from truth rather than appearances, from spiritual reality rather than material sense. Your entire life begins reflecting this consciousness. Problems still appear, but they do not control you. Challenges still arise, but they do not define you. Circumstances still fluctuate, but your inner peace remains stable. You are no longer tossed by every wave. You are anchored in the eternal presence that is your true identity. People begin noticing something different about you. Not that you are perfect or problem-free, but that you carry a certain quality of peace, a quiet confidence, a gentle authority. You are not trying to impress anyone. You are simply being who you truly are. This is the natural result of years of recognizing God as your being. The transformation extends beyond your personal life into your impact on others. Without trying, you become a healing presence. Your consciousness affects people around you. When you enter a room, the atmosphere shifts. When you speak truth, people feel it resonate in their own souls. You are not doing this through personal power. Divine consciousness is simply expressing through you. Joel discovered this as his consciousness deepened. People were healed in his presence without him saying a word. Situations resolved themselves when he held spiritual awareness. Problems dissolved as consciousness recognized their unreality. He was not performing miracles. He was simply being the transparency for God that he had become through years of practice. This is available to you as well. Not because you are special, but because God is the only presence. And as you recognize this truth, it becomes visible through your experience. You do not need to be perfect. You do not need to have all the answers. You simply need to be faithful to your practice of recognition, day after day, year after year. The world desperately needs people who live from spiritual consciousness rather than material sense. Every person who truly practices these principles becomes a light in the darkness, a healing presence in a world dominated by fear. Your faithfulness to this practice is not just about your personal transformation. It is your contribution to the spiritual evolution of humanity. There will be moments when you forget everything you have learned. Old patterns will resurface. Fear will temporarily dominate. You will find yourself praying to God again, begging for help, feeling separate and powerless. This is normal. This does not mean you have failed. It means you are human, walking a gradual path of awakening. Joel himself had moments of forgetting. In his writings, he honestly shares times when he fell back into material sense, when appearances seemed more real than spiritual truth, when fear gripped him despite his deep understanding. What made him a master was not that he never forgot, but that he always remembered again. He always returned to recognition. You will do the same. When you catch yourself in old patterns, do not condemn yourself. Simply recognize, I forgot for a moment, but now I remember. God is present as my being right now. Nothing has changed in spiritual reality. I am still the expression of divine consciousness, even when I temporarily forgot. And continue your practice. Spiritual growth is not linear. You do not climb steadily upward without setbacks. You move forward, slip backward, move forward again. Over time, the trajectory is upward, but the path includes valleys as well as peaks. The key is consistency, not perfection. The power is in returning to truth, not in never leaving it. This is what happens when you stop praying to God and start praying as God. You discover who you truly are. Not a limited human being begging for scraps from a distant deity, but the very presence of divine consciousness, expressing as individual being, right here, right now. This is your spiritual identity. This is the truth Joel Goldsmith lived and taught. Your life becomes a demonstration of this truth. Not perfect, not problem-free, but rooted in spiritual reality rather than material appearances. You live from presence rather than lack, from wholeness rather than brokenness, from peace rather than fear. You become the answer you have been seeking. The journey continues from here. Every day is an opportunity to deepen your recognition. Every challenge is an invitation to practice spiritual consciousness. Every moment offers the choice. Will you live from separation or from oneness? Will you beg or will you be? Will you pray to God or as God? Choose recognition. Choose presence. Choose the truth of your divine identity. And watch as your entire experience transforms from the inside out. This is not magic. This is not wishful thinking. This is the natural result of aligning consciousness with spiritual reality. This is the power of praying as God. If your spiritual understanding has expanded through these Joel Goldsmith teachings on praying as God rather than to God, like this video to help others discover their true divine identity. Subscribe for more transformative wisdom that awakens consciousness, and comment, I am the presence, to affirm your recognition of the divine being you truly are.